Hi, everybody. Welcome to our DCDS Alumni and Finance panel, Finance and Business. Super excited to have you all here and very excited to welcome our three panelists with us today who are basically going to teach us how to get jobs and how to have careers in business and finance and how to do that. So we're super lucky today to have Chanel Murph, Maxwell Simeon, and Katerina Gutsiak, and they're going to introduce themselves and share with you a little bit about their current jobs and careers. And then we have a series of questions for them. So thank you guys. Chanel, I don't know if you want to, kick us off, but if you want to just give an introduction, share a little bit about what you do, when you graduated from Country Day, things like that, that would be great.
Awesome. Good morning, everyone. I'm Chanel Murph. I graduated from Country Day in 2014. I stayed in Michigan. I went to the University of Michigan where I studied at the Ross School of Business, and I got a Bachelor's of Business Administration. I started my career off in consulting actually at PwC, where I was in their management consulting practice, and I did some change management and digital transformation work. I decided in the middle of the pandemic that I wanted to jump into finance, where I'm now working at BlackRock in New York as well. I'm in their institutional business, so I work with large institutions looking across pensions, foundations, endowments, healthcare institutions. I'm specifically doing business management and strategy. So as you think about different business issues that come across, we think through how do we work with our clients and position them there. So happy to be here with you guys and talk about that a little bit more.
Thank you. Maxwell?
Awesome. Hey, everyone. My name is Maxwell Simeon. I graduated from DCDS in 2013. I went on to Brown University and studied chemical engineering while I was there. I interned at the Boston Consulting Group, BCG, in their Atlanta office for 2 summers. I went back there full time after I graduated. While I was in consulting at BCG, I was focused on the consumer practice area. I did a lot of work with hotels, restaurants, and airlines. I also worked with our private equity diligence practice, where I was helping support buy side and sell side diligences on different companies trying to buy or purchase other companies. And then from there, I went on to now work at Spotify, where I'm the business operations lead for Gimlet, which is a podcast studio that Spotify acquired about 3 years ago. And in this role, I've focused primarily on helping to set goals, helping to project manage and implement any strategic initiatives that are coming from Spotify into the podcast studio. And I also help just sort of manage the sort of day-to-day budgets for a bunch of different podcasts that we have within the studio. So yeah, pleasure to be here. Happy to chat with you all.
Very cool. Thank you. Katerina?
Hey everyone, my name is Katerina. I graduated from Country Day in 2010. I studied at UW-Madison and I actually studied fine art and Spanish. So I have a very non-traditional business background. So I hope this inspires you not to limit yourself when thinking about what you may major in university. So I studied fine art and Spanish. Towards the end of my 4 years, I realized, hey, I love thinking creatively, but maybe I don't have the guts to go out as an artist or a designer. So I did a 1-year master's in management at the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern. And that led me to a company called Co-Collective in New York, which is a brand strategy and innovation consultancy. And I spent a number of years there helping brands better grow, but think about how they can grow through the lens of a stronger brand purpose, and worked on really interesting projects across financial services and technology companies, thinking about, what is the future of dental insurance? Or how can we make customer centricity the core of the way we design new insurance products, to how can we better structure the brand and the customer experience of one of the largest professional networking platforms. Love the work I was doing there, wanted to do something a bit more rooted in numbers. So I went back and I did an MBA at Northwestern again. And I'm now at BCG working in their general consulting practice.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you guys. That was great. So let's kind of take it from the top. Let's go back to college. What are 2 to 3 things that you did in college that you feel, looking back, were key to getting you to where you are today? And what do you recommend students, college students, even high school students do outside of classes to help them prepare or set themselves up for success, perhaps publications to read, things like that?
Cool. I can take the first
Sure.
stab at this one. So I think one of the most major things that I did that really helped me on my path was I did a program that was called, or that is called, Management Leadership for Tomorrow, which is a program that helps underrepresented minorities who are interested in having careers in business, like get started in that world. And so it did a lot of helping me with the training of what is consulting, how to get up to speed on that in terms of prepping for case interviews as a sophomore, and then like securing that internship that I ultimately got as a sophomore and then returned as a junior. So that was like one thing that was super influential. And then while I was also on campus, I was involved and helped create a program called Black in Business on campus, or Black in Business at Brown. And it was essentially a similar sort of program, but we created it because we saw a need for it on campus to like really help prepare some of our other students on campus who are interested in going to those careers. So we just shared a bunch of resources, did resume reviews, like read Case in Point, cased each other on different like cases in those books to help prepare us for those interviews so that we were prepared to like do well when we're actually interviewing. And I think that those were two like sort of extracurricular things that I did while I was on campus to like really help me prepare for these roles right after school.
I love that. Before we move on, Maxwell, do you mind just defining what is a case interview? Because that's definitely going to be something that anyone interested in this is going to have to do.
Yeah. So a case interview is essentially an interview where the interviewer is providing a prompt for you to help walk through and problem solve with them in real time. So usually it is analyzing some sort of business problem, something similar to understanding why the revenues of a business might be dropping or why they have been losing market share in a market. So say Apple hires BCG to see why that iPhone has been losing market share to Android in the India market. And so they will provide you a bunch of details and you're sort of thinking through with the interviewer what might be driving that problem. So maybe Android has identified a sub-market within India that has been growing more quickly. And so they like the particular Android phone that they're selling there. And that has been what's been driving it. And so then you're just working through different potential solutions to that problem after you sort of have triaged and worked through what might be driving that particular issue for the company, and then you're helping present solutions to what that might be. So throughout that interview, there might be some numbers that come up and say they might want you to calculate the size of that market or how quickly it has been growing. And so they might share different tables or charts with you. And so you're working through identifying what is going on in the chart, reciting it back to that interviewer, and then like taking that extra step of analyzing what you can utilize the information that's in that chart to help solve the problem. So just live problem solving on some sort of business problem, similar to what you would be doing on the job.
Yes. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Anyone else want to jump in and answer that question?
Yeah, I'd love to piggyback off of Maxwell. I think another thing that's really helpful, and he spoke on it a little bit, is just joining different organizations. So I was a part of the Black Business Undergraduate Society and the Women in Business Society. And on campus, as a freshman especially, you're exposed to seniors and juniors who have already gone through the recruiting process, who have had internships, who have had jobs. And so you are basically automatically given a mentor. And these mentors were super helpful for me in my orgs with my case prep, because I remember my first case interview, I'm like, what is this? I have to know how to take percentages of numbers at the top of my head. This is scary. There are recruiters coming for you. And so they're willing to be there and guide you along the way. Also, while you're in these different organizations, they're typically structured at a point where they're able to bring in companies to come speak to you. And so I was able to kind of get a full glimpse around different areas of business as a freshman, as a sophomore, see if I wanted to do investment banking. I was able to knock that off of my list pretty quickly, but I was able to learn and see the different sides of accounting, of finance, of marketing that you really wanted to do. And I also think about it from like lifelong friendships. I have friends that are in the industry that I was able to make. But the cool part about this was in college, like college is also fun. Not going to take that away, but my friends, I was able to go, we were able to get study rooms and we were able to work together through different assignments, studying for tests, which obviously your grades are going to be one of the most important things as you're looking for long-term jobs. But when you're able to join these different organizations, you're able to just have that core group of people that are able to go to the recruiting events with you. So you're not necessarily afraid and you're not alone. You're able to study with them. You're able to learn what they're interested in the companies that they're going to. And so I definitely advise you to just reach out, kind of go out of your bubble. Luckily, Country Day exposes you to these opportunities early. And I think that's definitely another leg up that I had when I got to college as well, because I felt really prepared. So definitely don't lose that momentum as you go and switch to college.
Great, thank you. Katerina, anything to add?
Yeah, I think I particularly love what Chanel said about keeping your horizons or your options broad. I think college those are 4 years where you truly have the opportunity to explore everything and anything. And while you may feel like I need to start day one, I'm going to be a finance major and I'm going to study for cases and I'm going to get a finance internship my first summer. And in fact, I'm even going to start interning at a financial institution while I'm at school. That's great. And that can set you up for a really strong career in a very single direction. But I would say don't miss the opportunity to explore more broadly. So if you're interested in business, maybe study something in addition to business. Take opportunities to study abroad, join other organizations, and think about how you can work on the skills that are important in business outside of the traditional business context. So in my case, I was in the jewelry and metalsmithing department at the University of Wisconsin. And I actually started the jewelry and metalsmithing organization, which was composed of undergraduate and graduate students. So as a 19-year-old, I was leading, 30, 40-year-olds who were in the Masters of Fine Arts program, and actually helped organize the first school-wide art sale to raise funds for all sorts of different activities that students may want to participate in, like bringing in artist speakers or taking field trips to museums and such. And so I think thinking creatively about how you can bring business outside of the traditional business context is really important. And taking advantage of opportunities like studying abroad. These kinds of experiences will later on bring or give you a very interesting perspective, which becomes very valued. So that would be kind of my biggest point, is just, don't pigeonhole yourself too early, but be conscious of the direction you're heading, but don't allow the path to get too narrow too quickly.
Great, thanks guys. Those were all awesome answers. Okay, so let's kind of start here. So if you had, and we touched on this a little bit, you each did, but if you had a finance or business internship in college, can you walk us through how you got those internships? And I'm truly hoping to get into the weeds here. Like, we want to know step by step, like, who did you reach out to? Who reached out to you? Things like that. Whoever wants to start is fine.
I mean, I started last time. I
That's
don't
okay.
want to step any toes, but okay, cool. All right. Cool. So for getting my internship, so I started off as a sophomore, and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do in the internship in. I originally was applying to a bunch of different things. I studied chemical engineering while I was in college, so I was applying to those as well. Going through a little bit of that process, I realized I didn't really want to do that, and I started looking more into business. At the time, my roommate, he was studying economics, really into like investment banking. So that's where I first started dipping my toes into, because he convinced me that investment banking might be for me. I did a couple of those interviews, and to get those interviews, I went through our on-campus career center and sort of just put in my resume through that. I didn't do much like individual reach out to recruiters for those particular companies. However, I did go to some of on usually whatever campus, they will have networking sessions or on like like those companies might come on campus. And so I went to a couple of those intro networking sessions just to get a sense for where at these events, they'll present about the firm and say, this is what we do. This is the type of work that we're interested or that we do at the firm. And if you're interested, you should apply for this subsegment or this subsegment. And so that was where I originally got interested in investment banking. Did a couple of those interviews, realized also didn't like that. So then I was like, okay, where is something that is still in the business world, still utilizes like problem solving and numbers, but isn't quite as heavily in finance. And so I ended up at consulting. And so from there, similar sort of thing, went to a lot of the info sessions on campus, saw which firms I was most interested in and just put in applications there. I got interviews at a couple of them. And then I was really like also prepping simultaneously for the case interviews, because when I learned how BCG and like all these other firms that are in that same sphere, like Bain and McKinsey and Accenture and all those guys do their interviews, I knew I needed to prep because it's not really like interviews that I had seen before. And so that's where I was joining a lot of these organizations to like really learn how to do a case interview and how to succeed and do them well. And then from there was like ready to do the interviews. And then it was 2 rounds of interviews for BCG, in which on 2 days you have 2 interviews. So 4 interviews total over the course of that. And so, yeah, that was how I landed at the internship for the summer. And then I really enjoyed my experience and ended up coming back for a second summer.
Okay, great. Did you do your senior project or anything in a related business or finance field, or was college your first foray into this?
College was my first foray. I think my senior project, I was basically a teacher. I worked at my old middle school in Detroit for my senior project. And then I think for the summer between my junior year and senior year of high school, I worked a little bit in business at a construction firm, but like on the finance side in the back office. Okay. So I guess that was my, first like foray into that space, but
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Who wants to go next?
So I can just add it to here. My work in business started after undergrad, but I will say while you're in undergrad and whenever you are a student, take advantage of the fact that people love sharing advice with students.
So true.
As soon as you are no longer a student, I don't know what it is, doesn't matter how old you are, like the dynamic changes. So take advantage of using your network, whether they're your parents' friends, friends of your siblings, your friends' friends who are working in fields that you're interested in. Have conversations with them to learn about, what their company is doing, what their role entails, if there are opportunities for internships or to shadow, for any of those sorts of exploratory conversations. People will give you really great candid advice on what's good, what's bad about the job, how to prepare. And a lot of these kinds of conversations can lead to internship or job opportunities. So don't exploit, but take advantage of being a student. People love helping students.
The power of the informational interview is key. Yeah, love it. Yeah, Chanel.
Definitely. So I had a pretty similar experience to Maxwell, so I don't want to dive too far into that. But I think one thing that is totally underrated in your freshman and sophomore year are a ton of companies have these 2 and 3 day programs that are specifically for people who aren't necessarily old enough for that full summer internship. And so I got a couple of those. Shout out to some of the programs. So MLT, Jumpstart, Forte, Lead. There's just a ton of programs that are literally looking to help students in business. But I did this by going to career fairs. A lot of times they would have like free apps or like free food there too. So as a college student, that was one thing that was definitely appealing to me. But I would go and I would literally just walk around and I would talk to people. And I ended up working at PwC, really embarrassing, but their colors at the time were like this hot pink, orange, and yellow. And as a girl, I was like, oh, this is really cute. The recruiter also had on a pink blazer, but that was a conversation starter for the two of us. And I really just enjoyed who she was. She got to talking about the values of PwC, and that went into, hey, we have this program called START. We would love for you to do this. I also got a couple of the other ones. Also, these programs are typically paid for in really fun cities. So Chicago, then New York, LA, wherever that may be. And I definitely imagine companies transitioning back to that a little bit post-pandemic. But 2-3 days, you get to explore. You're not necessarily committed to a full summer internship. You're typically either at the beginning or the end of the summer. But this way, you're allowed to keep the horizons open, as Katarina mentioned, of what's out there, what's available. I definitely think that you should take advantage of these early on, because once you get to post-student age, as Katarina also mentioned, the networking is a little bit different. I think you should definitely reach out to people that went to former schools that you did, because I'll never shoot down anybody who reaches out to me from Michigan, but definitely go start a conversation, see what's out there. And even if you're not necessarily available to get an internship at the time, see what other opportunities are there. I think even when one door is closed, there's typically another door that is open and possible. So definitely just kind of like shoot your shot. That's what I tell everybody. It's a game where the worst thing that can happen to you is you're told no, but they'll either connect you with somebody in the firm. Oftentimes they're people that know each other. So I actually know someone that I told to speak to Maxwell this week. Don't necessarily know how that went, but I heard great things, right? But your network is all you know, and it can take you a really long way.
Love that. Katarina or Chanel, did you guys do anything for your senior project related to finance or business?
I did. I worked I did wealth management for my senior project in West Bloomfield area. I definitely think that was a really great opportunity just to kind of see. I had no clue what business was. I had no clue what finance was, but I was just able to kind of shadow in meetings. It was for Morgan Stanley. It was really interesting just to see. He was a former football player, actually. So he had high profile clients that were coming in, and he's looking at their full portfolios. He would take me to meetings. A lot of time those meetings were over lunch or over dinner. And so that's very reflective of what it looks like in the industry today. But I definitely say, keep that door open. I know sometimes you're like, let's do the super fun thing for your senior project. But this was one that I still have a relationship with him to this day. He's a good mentor of mine that is just connecting me and exposing me to more of the industry. But I was able early and on to say, hey, I have this connection to what I did in high school. And I was able to speak about that a little bit as well in those early interviews once I got to college.
Very cool.
I did my summer project with Mr. Masuda, actually.
Oh, cool.
Because I was part of the art conservatory. So no, it was not at all related to business. But I do want to say, when it comes to consulting, and I know I keep, because this is my background, having an understanding of basic business is important. But what becomes very valuable when you enter the role is your ability to think creatively, to structure problem solving, and to be empathetic to the people you are working with, because you're working with a team of 3 to 5, 10 people very closely, very intense hours, and you're also working with a client who may or may not be receptive to the work you are recommending. And so don't discount sort of these softer elements that can be developed outside of traditional areas.
Love that. Okay. So I think let's get more into your current jobs and what you're doing now. So how did you get your current jobs? And if you'd like to kind of elaborate, what should students expect in terms of preparation for a job interview? And how did you guys go about doing that?
The consulting application, the consulting application process is it's very straightforward in the sense that it's pretty standardized across companies, as Maxwell said, and there are tons of resources, books, and websites that break down the best way to approach cases. There's the behavioral interview, which is pretty standard, the same kind of conversation you would have in any sort of interview about your skills, leadership stories, challenges you face, just generally how you think. And then the case interview is pretty structured. So Maxwell mentioned the book Case in Point. I think that's an excellent beginning resource. And essentially you read that book, practice, 10 to 20 cases. I wouldn't overdo it. Work with friends, work with people who are working at the companies already to do mock interviews, and do a lot of, kind of quick mental math. There's some good resources online just to get that muscle moving. It's just like, running sprints, like being able to do quick mental math is just another muscle in your brain. So those are sort of the three elements. And I would also say, don't over prepare, because you can risk going into the interview sounding like a robot and presenting a framework that came out of the case in point book, word for word, and case interviewers will recognize, because they've run the case 50 times and they say, hey, that's not very, it's not a very innovative way of looking at it, or it actually doesn't address this problem directly. You're sort of using a canned answer. So use the resources, but then put something of your own into it as well.
Okay. And then, sorry, did you get the job at BCG right now through your MBA Career Center, or how did you network to get it?
So indirectly. So out of the MBA, I actually also spent a year at PwC at Strategy N, which is their management consulting business. And I interviewed with BCG while I was at Kellogg, and I'll tell you, the mental math piece is what threw me off. You'll have a series, I don't know what it's like for undergraduate recruiting, but in the MBA, there's a series of networking events that kind of whittle down the group. And so you're sort of at the end where you go to a big event, then they invite you to a dinner, and then you're at a smaller dinner when there are only 5 of you, and they say, hey, we love you, like, do well on your case. And, you get to the case and you have a moment of stage fright. So I would say, one, don't let those kinds of moments throw you off, because, a 45-minute case is just one 45-minute case, and sometimes you do well and sometimes you don't. But anyway, so I went through that process, did not perform well on one of my 2 cases. So I reapplied to BCG now a year later. And so it was, yes, indirectly through the MBA, kind of keeping those relationships warm during the year while I kind of regrouped.
I absolutely love that. And I think it's so key. Just because an opportunity does not work out the first time does not mean that those relationships with the organization have run cold. They're still warm. You need to foster them. And I think that is just an awesome story. So thank you for sharing. Chanel or Maxwell?
Yeah, so I, as I mentioned, I've been at BlackRock for about a year. And so I saw the role open actually on LinkedIn. And before I applied, I found a couple of people that worked on the team. And I did just shot some cold DMs and said, hey, I would love to just get 15 to 30 minutes of your time just to learn a little bit more. And so through the interview process, I was able to say, hey, I spoke with Anthony Palocomo from the team, or I spoke with Allison from the team. And that was really relatable. I think definitely the numbers piece is important. You'll go through cases, you'll want to be able to have some type of business knowledge, but it's really important just to be able to bring like your full self to the actual interview, be personable. There's the Google book that talks about being stuck in an airport for 7 hours with your team. And so people want people that they can really work with, especially if you're in consulting, when you're on the road all the time, or when you're in the office for 9-10 hours a day. You want someone who's not a robot. You want somebody who's just genuine and real. So feel free to bring like your true authentic self. And I think that was really helpful for me throughout my interviews, because I was able to just I didn't feel like I had to change into somebody I wasn't. And I felt like I knew the team already. And so by the time I put my application in, they were able to pull it for me. They were able to actually give a referral, and then the interviews went really smoothly from there.
I love that. I think it's really, I love the concept that you just directly reached out to people on LinkedIn. I think that people are shy to do that. And I just love that you took that initiative, because it is so important. If you don't have a warm connection at the place already, you need to have one. You need to figure out how to get a warm connection. And I think that that's so smart, and I love that. Maxwell?
Yes, for me, I utilized a little bit of my network. So I had sort of been following Gimlet for a while, mostly as just a super fan of their product,
Okay.
of the stuff they put out. I was like, oh, maybe it would be cool to work there one day. And I just like still working at BCG periodically and just check like anything new that would come up. One of my friends that I made while I was in that program I mentioned previously called MLT was working at Spotify, and I saw a role that came up at Spotify that was the role that I ultimately ended up getting, that I was interested in. And I chatted with her a little bit about it, and then she put in a referral for me to like get through the process. And so from there, got the referral, and then sort of went through the interview process that way. And it was mostly through my network. So utilizing some of like previous connections that I had to make myself stand out when I was doing the application.
Very helpful. Okay, well, guys, thank you so much. I actually would love to just kind of hear more about your jobs and what you do day to day. You both have awesome jobs, and I'm sorry that Katerina had to jump, but can you just like give us a little overview of what you do each day, what you think makes your job fun? I would love to hear.
Yeah.
Maxwell, I'll let you start.
Okay, cool. So my day-to-day is I would say there's like a routine over the course of a week. I think
Okay.
the day can vary a little bit, but essentially it has to do with running reports on what is the state of the studio overall in terms of like how quickly are we gaining listeners, how many hours are they listening to. So I have a weekly report that I run and present that out at our weekly executive team meeting that we have on Mondays. Then the other meetings in the week really depends on what the strategic initiatives are that we're going on. Some of the things that we're running right now are like we're about to launch a test. And so I'm sort of project managing a lot of aspects of what that test would be on this actual Spotify product. So a bunch of cross-functional meetings with a bunch of the different teams that will be involved. So chatting with marketing, chatting with the content operations team, and chatting with like our ad sales team to like make sure everybody's all on the same page of we want to hit this deadline in May, and then working backwards from there, different things that we need to have done on particular weeks to make sure that we're like all in sync and ready to launch on May 9th, fingers crossed. And then so that is something that has been taking a lot of my time on the day-to-day now. Additionally, when it comes to individual podcasts within our portfolio, we're doing what we call state of the show meetings right now, which is basically a review of how they have performed in 2021 and so far in 2022, and just giving those teams an understanding of this is the amount of listeners that you all got last year. This is the amount of consumption hours that came through the door last year as well. Given all that information, we've crunched the numbers and we think that your goal for 2022 should be this. And here are some of the tactics that we think you can employ in order to help you achieve that goal. And we're going to like walk you through those things and walk you through those tactics so that you're like prepared and ready to deploy them to achieve those goals. And so that's the, I guess, breakdown of what has been like my primary like weekly. And so those meetings just sort of spread out throughout the week on the day-to-day of just managing different aspects of those projects.
Okay, very cool. That sounds awesome.
And so for BlackRock, they manage $10 trillion in assets, which is a huge number. And I focus specifically in their institutional business. So you think of large companies where they have mainly pensions, things that people our age really aren't getting anymore, or 401ks, 501c3s, et cetera. And so what I do specifically is I work for the head of the business where we work through business management and strategy. So if there is an upcoming meeting, focus on, right now we're looking at what's happening with oil and gas in Texas and different companies that are invested there that are looking to reallocate their portfolio. So moving around, some companies in some instances are looking to go into more alternatives. So things that you're hearing about in private equity, or I know this is a little more far-fetched, but on the NFT side, right, or the crypto side. So think people that are looking to reinvest. And so I work specifically to look through different portfolios and see how are these companies allocated, what companies are interested in different things. So some companies have interest in sustainability or diversity, equity, inclusion, and what funds do we have available to match to them. I support 6 different core teams, both in the US and Canada. And so it's a lot of learning. I think that's something that I wanted in this role, where I could see on the very large scale. It's definitely not as nitty gritty as like the wealth management side where you're managing individual portfolios, but I get to hear from like high level CIOs and able to fit in on some of these calls sometimes when I'm prepping for them. And it's a lot of strategy work. And so where do we want to be in the next year? So right now, alternatives is our long-term focus, since a lot of companies are looking to move that way. And so we literally work daily to just think through, how are we going to reach our $7 billion that we're trying to raise in this area this year? And sometimes it sounds really unattainable, but as a 25-year-old, I'm in these meetings with these people who are literally able to sell all the time and just helping them rethink through. And so I think in the beginning of my career, I was really afraid to be in the rooms with the large senior leaders, because I'm like, hey, I'm 21, right out of college. How is my voice important? And I had a partner at the very beginning tell me, if you're in the room, you're in the room for a reason. Chances are you have a perspective that I probably couldn't think about. And if it's valid, that's great. And if it's not, I'll support you on how to get out of that hole, but don't keep your mouth shut. And so I think that's one of the most exciting pieces of my day-to-day. I think we're in this really interesting time where in asset management, it's really traditional. Most business is literally done over dinner or on the golf course. And so the head of our business right now is thinking through, how do we keep up with the digital revolution? And so there's a lot of getting traditional portfolio managers to do work more so in a digital manner. So I've been able to lead that initiative internally, but they're hoping to also have that translate from the behavioral side externally as well. And so I've been able to leverage my change management background that I had in consulting in this new role too. And I think that's what keeps it fun. I think it's the ever evolving kind of day to day, where when you turn on the news and something's happening in the world, it's affecting the business too. And so it forces me to keep up to speed with what's happening, but it also feels like what I'm doing is relevant. At the end of the day, we want to make impact to, though we're helping like large companies that have money, chances are they're people, real people, whether they're teachers that have pensions, whether they're just anybody, that's who we're really making an impact for. And so that's what kind of keeps me going and has me excited about my role.
I love it. Wow. You guys are amazing. Thank you for doing this. So if you're watching this, you are more than welcome to reach out to any of our panelists today via LinkedIn, via email. I have their contact information. Please network with them. Please build your Country Day alumni network. And we are just so appreciative to you both and to Katerina for joining and sharing your time with us and your knowledge and your expertise. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Happy to.
Thank you, Annie.